Good evening. Welcome to Victory Grace Baptist Church on Wednesday night. And we're privileged to have Noah and his wife Samantha from Colorado Springs here to fill in for Pastor Williams. And we're just glad to be here and have a safe trip. So anyways, we'll start off tonight. We'll sing a couple hymnals and then we'll turn it over to him. So if you would all turn to page 202. And thanks to Jared for accompanying us. We'll just kind of follow.
What page is that?
202.
Thank you.
And if you could stand. And what we do here is sing the first, second verse, and you're going to do the pause, and he fills in the pause, and then we pick up on the fourth. So we'll do that on the first and second song too.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound, saved a wretch like me. Once was lost, but now I see. Grace that taught my heart to fear. Grace my fears relieved. The precious thing that grace of you, the hour I first believed. We've been there 10,000 years, shining as the sun. No one's days to sing God's praise when we first begun.
Let's turn over to, if I can remember what that one was, 544, 544. Oh, how I love Jesus.
Sounds like music in my ear, the sweetest saving word. Oh, I love Jesus. Oh, I love Jesus. Oh, I love Jesus. Because He first loved me. Tells me all the Savior. Set me free. Tells me of His precious blood and saves perfectly. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Because He first loved me.
No, go ahead, I'm just
Tells me of the glory of King who in sorrow bears alone, and none can bear below. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Because He first loved me.
You may be seated. So before we get started, any prayer requests or praises? Take care.
Praise that we have a preacher and his wife here.
Have that.
A preacher and his wife here. A praise.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Oh, I thought that was a request. I'm like, what? Go ahead.
My dad's healing up good from his surgery, so that's a praise. He's getting around good and
Good deal.
doing pretty good for where he's at.
He's not up to a mile yet, though, right?
He did walk a mile for the first time the other day.
All right.
And the worst part of it was, he didn't pick an easy mile. Like, our driveway was all uphill. He walked all the way down to the first turn and all the way back up. I told him, I was like, you could have picked an easier path.
Wow.
Doing good.
Good deal, good deal. Did your dog make it home all right?
Yes, thank you.
Good. And Thomas is seemingly still blissful, whatever.
Don't try to imagine it.
What?
I said, don't try to imagine it.
Of course, we'll remember the Williams. They made it okay. The Uber thing didn't turn out well. See, they were gonna meet at a place in Denver and then take an Uber to the airport. That didn't work out, but at least they made it to the airport and got up. And I'll remember him while I was there and his hamstring tear and his uncomfortable trip back home, so. Pray to get things worked out, or take care of a lot of issues with his dad while I was there. And of course, remember, Travis and his surgery, recovered from that, and Dave. And anything else? All right, well, let's go to work in prayer. Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you that we can have this privilege to be here tonight. Just pray that you'll be here tonight with us and Spirit, just guide and direct Noah as he brings us the message tonight. Just bless them for coming here, making the trip. Maybe they had a safe trip, and pray that they'll have a safe trip back home tomorrow. And think of those that are in need of comfort and peace. Pray for John's recovery, and his recovery's coming along. He's able to walk. Pray for Travis and his recovery. Pray for Dave. He's had some upcoming medical issues as well. Just pray for the church building, or a church building. And as the process goes along there, that we'll know what to do. We'll have the patience to know what to do. And also the other property, there's been some issues. There arose complications, but we know that your hand is in it, Lord, and that just pray for the patience there as well. And just pray that you open our hearts tonight, and bless Noah with your wisdom. In Jesus' name.
Well, it is great to be in Craig, Colorado. When Pastor Matthew Miller gave me this opportunity, I was a little set back. I was like, well, why do you want me to do it? But it was something that God allowed me to do, so here we are. A little bit about me and my wife. We're actually originally from Roseburg, Oregon. I'm currently in the military, almost done with it. And that's what brought us to Colorado Springs, brought us to Grace Baptist Church. We actually got married in Grace Baptist Church. And we've been there ever since. We've been here just about 3 years, and we plan on staying in Colorado Springs and serving the Lord there. Tonight, I want to give you a message that is in detail about what Jesus Christ went through for us during his crucifixion process, both what he went through by his own people and what he went through on the Roman side of things. The reason why I want to give this to you all tonight is to, one, encourage us a little bit to keep pushing forward, to convict us a little bit, to examine ourselves, to see what we can do further, and to kind of pull at our heartstrings a little bit, just to kind of really understand what it is Jesus Christ went through for us. All right. I by no means am what you would think of when you hear the word preacher. I'm not anything like that. I am kind of a little out of the box, but we will get through it tonight. So like I said, I wanted to go over in detail what Jesus went through during his crucifixion to encourage us to go a little further when we're tempted to quit on the mission God has given us. If you all would turn with me to Luke 22. Luke 22. We're going to go to verse 42. Verse 42. Give y'all a second to get there. Tonight I'm going to allow the Bible to really explain this message through, because to be in all honesty, what I have to say means nothing, but what God has to say means everything. All right, we all there? All right, verse 42. It says, saying, Father, if thou wilt be willing, remove this cup from me, nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. Jesus is saying here, Father, if there's any way that I don't have to go through this, because he fully knew what he had to go through during this time. But if not, your will be done. Saying, I know what's about to happen, but God, if you need me to go through this, I will willingly. I will do it for you. All right, let's turn. Just look down in verse 47 and 48. And while he yet spake, behold, the multitude, and he that was called Judas, one of the 12, went before them and drew near unto Jesus and kissed him. But Jesus said unto him, Judas, betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss? Judas, someone who Jesus was close to throughout his 3-year ministry, one of his 12 disciples, betrays him, giving him up, may I add, for a small bag of silver that we would learn in previous passages. Someone who called themselves a friend of Jesus gave him up so very easily. Just think about that. Somebody that you've been with for your entire ministry just gives you up for a very small amount of money. Something that had to pull at Jesus' heart, something that he had to go through before any of the physical pain started, just the emotional pain. You have to think about what he went through during this time. Somebody that called himself a friend of Jesus betrays him for something that we call mammon. But the focus here tonight is that he didn't quit, he went a little further. Now I have to give credit to that specific quote. I grew up in Roseburg, Oregon. My pastor was Pastor Clint Cavanis, Victory Baptist Church there. And that's something that he would constantly say, but he didn't quit. He went a little further. Several messages he would incorporate that specific phrase into his messages. And so I'll give credit to where credit is due. Luke 22, 54 through 64. We'll just go down here a little bit. 54. Then they took him and led him and brought him into the high priest's house, and Peter followed afar off. And when they had kindled a fire in the midst of the hall, and were set down together, Peter sat down among them. But a certain maid beheld him as he sat by the fire, and earnestly looked upon him, and said, This man was also with him. And he denied him, saying, Woman, I know him not. And after a little while another saw him, and said, Thou art also of them. And Peter said, Man, I am not. And about the space of 1 hour after another, confidently affirming, saying, Of a truth this fellow also was with him, for he is a Galilean. And Peter said, Man, I know not what thou sayest. And immediately while he spake, the cock crew, and the Lord turned and looked upon Peter. And Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said unto him, Before the cock crow, thou shalt deny me thrice. And Peter went out and wept bitterly. So not only is the betrayal of Judas during this time of Jesus' turmoil, another friend, somebody that could have been known as his best friend. After Jesus rises again, we know that Jesus comes to Peter personally and says, Hey, do you love me? And he asks him this 3 times, and he confirms it 3 times. And he's saying that, just affirming that Peter could have very well been known as Jesus' best friend, one of his best friends here on earth. But yet, he denied him 3 different times. And Jesus is full well knowing, as the Bible says here, he said he looked upon Peter, and they locked eyes together. And just the heartache that Jesus is now going through, you have to understand that two of his closest friends have now, one betrayed him and the other denied that he even knew him. But he didn't quit. He went a little further. Luke 23, 63 through 65. And the men that held Jesus mocked him and smote him. And when they had blindfolded him, they struck him on the face and asked him, saying, Prophesy, who is it that smote thee? And many other things, blasphemy spake they against him. By his own people, may I add, by Judaic law, an illegal trial, Jesus was beaten, buffeted, and mocked as an attempt to discredit Jesus as the true Son of God. You have to think about this. The Jews were willing to break their own law to condemn somebody who had done no wrong. Somebody who days before just offered up his own king, had offered to set his kingdom up in Jerusalem. But yet, his own people condemn him, mock him, and speak blasphemies against him. But he didn't quit. He went a little further. Let's go over to Matthew 27, verses 21 through 24. Matthew 27, 21 through 24. I do not intend to be long tonight. However, I do hope that we can grasp the truth that is being said here. Alrighty. Matthew 27, verse 21. The governor answered and said unto them, Whether of the twain will ye that I release unto you? They said, Barabbas. Pilate saith unto them, What shall I do then with Jesus, which is called Christ? They all say unto him, Let him be crucified. And the governor said, Why? What evil hath he done? But they cried out more, saying, Let him be crucified. When Pilate saw he could prevail nothing, but that rather a tumult was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person, see ye to it. May I say one thing, Pilate is still washing his hands in hellfire, thinking that he is innocent of Christ's blood, because it was him that condemned him to death, because he had the authority to, or to not send him to the cross. Exonerated by Pilate, the Jewish people still cry out to crucify the one who offered to set up his kingdom in Jerusalem just a few days prior. Even one of the most powerful politicians of that day recognized that Jesus was not only innocent, but at the very least someone to be respected. But even with Pilate's pull and power in the government, he cowered out and gave in to the people's heinous cries for crucifixion of a man who will pay for no sins of his own. You have to think Pilate himself saw that Jesus was a just man, someone who was to be respected, someone who was to be reverend even. But he still gave him up anyway. But Jesus didn't quit. He went a little further. Now, up to this point, we've dealt with everything that his own people have done to him, that Pilate's offered him up for crucifixion. And yes, he's been beaten and buffeted among his own people, but the real pain, the real physical pain hasn't started. All this is really emotional pain. Beaten by his own people, betrayed by a friend, and denied by who could be called his best friend. Now let's get into the crucifixion part, and we're going to go in detail about what exactly he went through to encourage us to go a little further just as he did. Both the Bible and history teach us what exactly Jesus went through after being condemned to the rugged cross. Number one is during many crucifixions, the condemned would be stripped naked, being an open shame through the entire process. Jesus specifically was mocked and shamed as they put a reed in his hand and a crown of thorns on his head, as we see in Matthew 27 through 30. They then stripped Jesus of any raiment and beat the crown of thorns into his head with the reed they put in his hand. History teaches us that the thorns would have been 1.5 to 3 inches long. You have to think this entire crown of thorns, and you have anywhere from that long to about that long going into your head. And it was beaten into his head. History teaches that the thorns would have been 1.5 to 3 inches long. Imagine something the size of a long nail being beaten into your skull. But he didn't quit. He even went a little further. From here on out, I'm going to give you the references due to time. I have a lot of information here, so if you'd like to write them down, I have multiple references here through the message, but what I'd just like to do is really have a conversation with y'all. Number 2, Jesus was then tied to a vertical post and severely beaten with a Roman instrument called the cat of nine tails. The whip contained bone shards, metal balls, and metal spikes. And the technique used was they would strap him vertically to a pole like so all his muscles and his skin would be stretched out along his back, and the Roman soldier would come back with that cat of nine tails and whip it around his body so where it would tear open his abdomen and his back, and this would cause deep wounds, severe pain, severe bleeding, and would weaken the body to pure exhaustion. But he didn't quit. He went a little further. You understand that Jesus had an out. Through this entire process, he could have called it all off. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But he didn't quit even after the severe punishment by the Roman soldiers with this specific instrument. He didn't quit. He went a little further. The next thing we see here is that Jesus was forced to then carry his cross. Often during a crucifixion process, they would tie the center beam across your shoulders, and you would carry it up the mountain to what's called Golgotha. And then led to the place of execution. The references, if you would like them, is Matthew 27, 31 through 33, Mark 15, 18 through 22, Luke 23, 26 through 33, and John 19, 17. But may I add, he didn't quit even at this point. You understand his body is in complete exhaustion at this point due to the whippings, due to the beatings, due to everything he's gone through up to this point, and he still managed to carry his own cross up a hill. Yes, he had Simon help him due to the exhaustion that his human body could no longer take it anymore and had to be helped up the mountain. Number 4, at times Roman soldiers would cut off body parts of prisoners, not to kill them, but to inflict further pain. A biblical example that we see of this is found in Isaiah 52:14, the prophesying of Jesus dying and the way he would die and how he would come to save us. It says, his visage was so marred, more than any man, and his form more than the sons of men. Meaning that he could not physically be recognized as a human being. And as history shows, that they would cut off body parts such as fingers, your tongue, your nose, just to further inflict that bodily pain as a punishment. Once arrived at Golgotha, also known as Mount Calvary, Jesus' hands were then nailed to the cross and then lifted in the air and posted in the ground, dislocating all his upper joints. And then they would nail his feet to the cross. You understand, as they would raise Jesus up, again in open shame, so that as if the entire world could see it, he was posted down into the ground, and that would cause his shoulders, his elbows, everything to dislocate, making him fall down so they would nail his feet to the cross. So every time he would need to breathe, he would have to pull himself up on those dislocated joints, causing even further excruciating pain. But he didn't quit. He went even further. The reference for that is John 20:27. Number 6, on average, it would take anywhere from 3 hours to 4 days for someone to die on a cross unless further abuse was administered by Roman soldiers. The Bible shows us that it took just shy of 9 hours for Jesus to die on the cross. So you understand, his joints are dislocated, his body is in severe agony and pain, his skin is ripped open so that he's constantly bleeding, his body is weakened from the beatings and being nailed to the cross. The reference for the time that he was on the cross was Mark 15:25, where it shows that the 3rd hour, 9 a.m., is when he was first hung on it, to 6 p.m., found in John 19:31. But even here, 9 hours later of excruciating agony, he didn't quit. He went a little further. Number 7, something we as Christians don't fathom and don't fully understand is that Jesus always had an out, but he never took it. Matthew 26:53. Let's just go ahead and go over there because we're already here. Matthew 26:53. Thinkest thou that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels? You understand that Jesus could have called 12 legions of angels. We sing the song, he could have called 10,000 angels. Well, it was much, much more than 10,000 angels. And the power of one angel could wipe out an entire city. We go back to the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, where 2 angels wiped out the entire place. But he didn't. He didn't because he loved you more than his desire to end the pain, the physical pain that he was in, the emotional pain that he had suffered. He loved you and I more than needing to end his own pain. So he didn't quit. He went a little further. Even after all the torture and all the pain, and in my opinion, the worst part of Jesus' crucifixion, because you understand that a human body can suffer pain, you can keep going. That's why in U.S. governments and other governments, they send you to schools that's called SEER school. They literally torture you to where you do not give up information. The human body can sustain physical pain. It can go through that without perishing. So in my opinion, the worst part of Jesus' crucifixion was when the sin of the world was dumped on Jesus' shoulders along with his cross. Not only was the weight of the world crushing him down, and not only was his body in pieces, but his Father couldn't even look upon him. You understand that God is a holy God, meaning he cannot look upon sin. And when all of our sin, the entire world's amount of sin, was put upon Jesus' shoulders on that cross, he couldn't even look at his own son. That's why we hear the verse that says, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? If you imagine at this point, if Jesus had any excuse to quit up to this point, he would have had one, but at that point, that would have been my quitting point. I mean, I would have quit a long time before that due to the pain, but my own father not being able to even look at me while I'm going through all the pain and the suffering that had to be done due to his own mission. God had to turn his back and could no longer look at his only son. To be completely honest, me being a father, if I had to send my son to do something like this, I couldn't look at it either. Because I would know that this had to be done. That this would have that his son had to go through this. So the emotional pain, if you don't think that God is emotional, I beg to differ, because he loved you so much that he gave his only begotten son. And in doing so, he had to watch his only son be put through an immense amount of torture that human beings concocted themselves. But he didn't give up. He went a little further. Jesus would cry out, "It is finished," and die on that cross, paying for our sin debt entirely and in full. This is probably my favorite part of the message, but Jesus didn't stay dead. He went even a little further after death. After 3 days and 3 nights, he rose again, giving us the hope of eternity one day with him. To wrap this all up, Jesus was born of a virgin, wrapped in swaddling clothes, laid in a manger, but he went a little further. From the time he was a child to the age of 30, he had no known ministry. But he still knew God's purpose for him. He still knew his Father's purpose. And so he went a little further. Jesus had a 3-year ministry on this planet, being persecuted through the entire thing, but he went a little further. Jesus then was betrayed by one of his disciples, giving him up for a small amount of money, but he went a little further. Jesus was then denied by one of his best friends, but he went a little further. Jesus was beaten, mocked by his own people, but he went a little further. Jesus was then given to the Roman soldiers and the Roman authority to be crucified. And we've gone through all the pain that he had gone through. But he still went a little further. He ended up dying on the cross that he was hung on. But he went a little further. He rose from the dead to give us the hope of eternal life, but he still goes a little further. He says, "I go to prepare a place for you," meaning you and I, born-again Christians, are sealed until the day of redemption, and we have a place in heaven with him one day. So my encouragement to you, whenever you are tempted to quit, tempted to give up on God's plan for you, tempted to give in to your own flesh, saying, "I can't do this anymore, it's causing me too much pain," go ahead and think of the pain that Jesus endured for you and I to one day have a place in heaven with him. Think of everything he had to go through in order to save my soul and your soul. Hey, if Jesus can use a reformed, backslidden, on the verge of becoming an alcoholic, tatted Christian like myself, he can use each one of you. There's no excuse. We have the perfect example in Jesus Christ, how he didn't quit on you or I, but he decided to go a little further. So my encouragement to each one of you is to go a little further. I really appreciate the opportunity that was given. I know it was a short, condensed message, but I believe that's what God would have me to do. I appreciate you guys' time, and I appreciate the opportunity tonight.
Well, unless anyone else has any other prayer requests or praises or praise service, the offering plate will be sitting back here in the windowsill. Take, for a love offering. And with that, Brother Ed, would you close us in prayer?